Miss Lorraine Washington was watering the roses in the front garden of the Richardson mansion when she saw the Uber pull into the circular driveway. She knew that car. She had been waiting for it all week, praying that her Miss Diamond would come home healthy and whole. But something in her spirit told her to be careful. Something whispered a warning. Miss Lorraine was a woman in her 60s with dark brown skin weathered by 60 years of living and working hard. She had raised 4 children of her own, buried a husband, and worked as a housekeeper for the Richardson family for 8 years. She had watched Miss Diamond grow from a young bride into a woman. She had watched her smile fade when the cancer diagnosis came, and she had held her hand when the doctors delivered the news that nobody wants to hear. Stage 4, terminal. The cancer was everywhere. The doctors said she had maybe 2 months to live, maybe 3 if she was lucky and the pain medication worked. But Miss Lorraine had also watched something miraculous happen. She had watched Diamond battle stage 4 cancer with nothing but faith. She had watched Diamond lie in a hospital bed, bald and weak, speaking about God's plan instead of giving up. She had watched Diamond meet an old woman named Mother Sarah in the hospital waiting room, a woman who had come to pray with strangers every single day for 30 years, never asking for payment, never asking for thanks, just praying. And she had watched that old woman pray with Diamond. She had watched Mother Sarah hold Diamond's hand and speak words of faith so powerful that the nurses had to leave the room because they were crying. She had watched Mother Sarah whisper, "Baby girl, God didn't bring you this far to leave you here. You're going to live. You're going to survive. And when you do, you're going to be stronger than you ever were before." And then the miracle happened. The tumors started to shrink. The cancer markers in her blood started to drop. The doctors ran the scans again and again because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Within 6 months, the cancer was gone, completely gone. The doctors called it a remission, but Miss Lorraine knew better. She knew it was God's hand reaching down and saying, "Not this one, not yet. She has more to do." So when Miss Lorraine saw Diamond emerge from the Uber looking radiant, her new hair growing back thick and beautiful, her skin glowing with health, a smile on her face that hadn't been there in over a year, Miss Lorraine's heart should have been full of joy. But it wasn't. Because Miss Lorraine had a secret, a terrible secret that she had been carrying for 3 weeks, a secret that was about to destroy everything. This is a story of faith, miraculous healing, and how one woman's survival became a mission to help thousands of others survive too. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a little but heartfelt request. Please support us by subscribing to this channel, hit the like button and share. Your support is what keeps our stories alive, and also, don't forget to tell us where you are watching us from, maybe Chicago, Texas, or Washington, D.C. We would love to know as far as our stories travel. Let's continue the story. Miss Lorraine watched Diamond climb the front steps of the mansion. She watched her pull out her key and open the door. And that's when Miss Lorraine heard them. His laugh, Terrence's laugh coming from upstairs, and another laugh, a woman's laugh, a laugh that Miss Lorraine knew as well as she knew her own heartbeat. Victoria Lane. Miss Lorraine's hands went cold. She set down her watering can and moved quickly toward the house. She needed to warn Miss Diamond. She needed to stop her from walking up those stairs. She needed to. But she was already too late. 3 weeks earlier, Miss Lorraine had been doing what she always did on a Tuesday afternoon. She had been cleaning the master bedroom, changing the sheets, straightening the room that Miss Diamond and Terrence shared. The room where they had built a marriage. The room where, just months ago, Terrence had held his dying wife's hand before she went to the hospital for what everyone thought would be the last time. Miss Lorraine had heard voices coming from downstairs, Terrence's voice and Victoria's voice. They were in the study, behind a closed door, but the sound carried through the air vents in the old mansion. "She's not going to make it," Terrence said. He sounded certain. He sounded like he was talking about a business deal, not about the woman he had promised to love. "How much longer?" Victoria asked. "The doctor said maybe 2 months," Terrence replied. And when she's gone, the company goes to Roosevelt. But there's a clause in his will that says if Diamond dies before him, everything goes to her estate, which means it goes to me. I'll have complete control of the Washington Company." Miss Lorraine's hand had frozen on the pillowcase she was holding. "So you're saying that Diamond dying is good news for you?" Victoria asked. And then she laughed, a laugh that made Miss Lorraine's skin crawl. "Better than good news," Terrence said. "It's the best news. Roosevelt has been talking about retiring. He wants to hand the company over to Diamond eventually. But if Diamond's gone, I'll be able to convince him to give it to me. I'll be a billionaire, Victoria. We'll both be rich. We both profit from this." "What do you mean we?" Victoria asked. "I'm not part of this plan." "You will be," Terrence said. "Once Diamond's gone, you and I will be together. We'll have the company, we'll have all the money, we'll have everything." There was a pause. Then Victoria said, "I like the sound of that." Miss Lorraine had stood in that bedroom with her heart pounding so hard she thought it would break through her ribs. She had listened to Terrence and Victoria make plans. Plans to wait for Diamond to die. Plans to take over the company. Plans to become rich off the death of a woman who had done nothing but love them both. She had wanted to go downstairs and confront them. She had wanted to tell them that they were monsters, but she was terrified. She was terrified of what they might do to her. She was terrified of losing her job. She was terrified of getting involved in something so dark and twisted. So she had kept quiet. She had kept the secret locked inside her chest like a stone. But then something impossible had happened. Miss Diamond had walked into the house one day with a smile on her face and news that the cancer was gone. The doctors couldn't explain it. The scans were clear. The tumor that had been eating her from the inside out was just gone. Miss Diamond was in full remission. Miss Lorraine had cried. She had cried because she knew what Miss Diamond didn't know. She knew that her husband had been waiting for her to die. She knew that her best friend had been planning to profit from her death. She knew that the miracle that had saved Diamond's life was about to be threatened by the darkness in two people's hearts. And now, as Miss Lorraine watched Diamond climb the stairs, she knew that she had to tell her. She had to warn her. She had to stop this nightmare from getting worse. "Miss Diamond," Miss Lorraine called out, her voice sharp with urgency. She hurried into the hallway, moving as fast as her aging legs could carry her. Diamond turned, and Miss Lorraine saw the joy drain from her employer's face as she took in the older woman's expression. "Miss Lorraine," Diamond said, walking toward her with open arms. "I surprised him. I came home early. The doctor said I was strong enough to—" "Don't go to the bedroom," Miss Lorraine whispered, reaching for Diamond's arm. Her voice was urgent, desperate, breaking. "Miss Diamond, please, I'm begging you, don't go up there." Diamond's body went still, every muscle tensed, her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" she asked. But her voice had changed. It had become quiet and dangerous. Miss Lorraine pulled her into the kitchen. She closed the door behind them. And then, with her heart breaking into 1,000 pieces, she told Diamond everything. She told her about the conversation in the study. She told her about Terrence waiting for her to die. She told her about Victoria and Terrence laughing about taking over the company. She told her about the plans they had made. She told her about the words, the exact words, that she had heard them speak. "He was waiting for me to die," Diamond repeated quietly. She said it like she was testing out the words, like she couldn't quite believe that they were true. "He was waiting for me to die so he could steal my father's company." "Yes," Miss Lorraine whispered. "And I should have told you sooner. I should have told you the moment I heard them talking, but I was scared, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Miss Diamond. I should have been brave enough to protect you." Diamond walked to the window and looked out at the roses in the garden. The roses that Miss Lorraine had been watering when Diamond arrived home. The roses that symbolized love and beauty and something precious that was about to wilt and die. "Where are they?" Diamond asked. "Upstairs," Miss Lorraine said. In your bedroom. They've been up there for almost an hour. They didn't know I saw them go up together." Diamond turned to face Miss Lorraine, and in her eyes, the older woman saw something shift. She saw the sick woman disappear. She saw the cancer survivor emerge. She saw a woman who had already faced death and refused to surrender to it. She saw a woman who had nothing left to lose because she had already lost everything and survived. "Thank you for telling me," Diamond said. She reached out and held Miss Lorraine's weathered hands. "Thank you for having the courage to warn me, even though you were afraid. You did the right thing, and now I'm going to do what I need to do." "What are you going to do?" Miss Lorraine asked, her voice shaking. "I'm going to see the truth with my own eyes," Diamond said. "And then I'm going to make sure that both of them pay for what they've done, not with rage, but with justice. I'm going to make sure that they face consequences, and I'm going to make sure that my miracle isn't wasted on two people who don't deserve it." Diamond climbed the grand staircase slowly. Each step felt like she was walking through a dream. The photographs on the walls, her wedding day, her honeymoon, her anniversary celebrations, all felt like lies now. All of it was a performance. All of it was false. The master bedroom door was closed. She could hear sounds coming from inside, sounds that made her stomach turn. She thought about the cancer. She thought about the chemotherapy that had poisoned her body in order to save it. She thought about the radiation that had burned her skin and her spirit. She thought about lying in a hospital bed, bald and weak, believing that she was going to die. She thought about Mother Sarah, the old woman with the silver hair and the gentle hands, who had come to her hospital room and held her hand and prayed. "Baby girl," Mother Sarah had said, her voice filled with the authority of decades of faith, "God didn't bring you this far to leave you here. You're going to live. You're going to survive. And when you do, you're going to be stronger than you ever were before. God's got a plan for you, child. A big plan. A plan that requires you to be alive." Diamond had believed her, and God had answered that prayer. She turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. The scene was exactly what Miss Lorraine had warned her about. Terence and Victoria, tangled together in the sheets, in the bed where Diamond and Terence had made love for 13 years. In the bed where Terence had held her hand and promised to love her forever. In the bed where he had waited for her to die. For a moment, time stopped. Then Terence saw her. His face went white. Victoria screamed. They scrambled to cover themselves, but it was too late. Diamond had already seen everything. She had already understood everything. "Hello," Diamond said, her voice calm and steady. "I'm home early. The doctor cleared me. I thought I would surprise you on your birthday." "Diamond," Terence gasped, pulling the sheet up over his body. "This isn't what it looks like. I can explain, I can." "Don't," Diamond said. She turned to Victoria. "And don't you say anything either, because anything that comes out of your mouths right now is just going to be a lie, and I've had enough of lies." "Diamond, please," Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't mean." "You didn't mean to betray me?" Diamond asked. Her voice was soft, but it cut like a blade. "You didn't mean to sleep with my husband in my bed? Or did you not mean to plan my father's company takeover while you were waiting for me to die?" The color drained from both of their faces. "You know," Diamond said, "it wasn't a question. She had figured it out. She had put it all together." "Diamond, I love you," Terence said, and he actually had the audacity to step toward her, reaching for her with his hand. "What happened here? It was a mistake, but I love you. We can get past this. We can fix this." Diamond laughed. It was a short, sharp sound with no humor in it. "You love me so much that you were waiting for me to die," she said. "You love me so much that you were planning to steal my father's company. You love me so much that you brought my best friend to our bed. That's not love, Terence. That's not even close to love." She looked at them both, at the man she had married, at the woman she had called sister, and she felt something break inside her. But it wasn't her. It was the last piece of the person she had been before the cancer, the last piece of the person who had believed in their love. "Get out of this house," Diamond said. "Both of you. Get out right now or I'm calling the police and reporting what I found here, and then I'm calling my lawyers." "This is my house too," Terrence said. "You can't kick me out." "Actually, I can," Diamond replied. "And my lawyer is going to make sure that you get nothing. You're going to lose everything, Terrence, just like you wanted me to lose everything." She turned and walked out of the bedroom. Behind her, she heard Terrence calling her name. She heard Victoria crying. She heard the sounds of chaos and confusion as they realized what they had done, what they had lost, what their greed and betrayal had cost them. But Diamond didn't stop. She walked back down the hallway. She walked down the grand staircase. And she walked past Miss Lorraine, who was waiting in the kitchen with a packed suitcase and car keys in her hand. "I called you a ride," Miss Lorraine said. "It will be here in 5 minutes." "Thank you," Diamond said. She hugged the old woman tightly. "For telling me, for protecting me, for being brave when I needed you to be." "What are you going to do?" Miss Lorraine asked. "I'm going to survive this," Diamond said. "Just like I survived the cancer, just like I survived the doctors giving up. I'm going to take this betrayal and I'm going to make sure that justice is served. And then I'm going to build a life so beautiful, so full of purpose, that I'll almost forget this day ever happened." "Almost?" Miss Lorraine asked. "Almost," Diamond confirmed. "Because a day like this doesn't get forgotten, it gets transformed. It gets turned into something that helps other people. It gets turned into purpose." 2 hours later, Diamond was sitting in a leather chair in the office of James Patterson, a divorce attorney. James was a tall man in his 50s with sharp eyes that had seen every kind of betrayal that money and marriage could create. He had represented hundreds of women going through divorces, and he could read pain like other people read books. "Tell me what happened," James said gently. So Diamond told him. She told him about the cancer diagnosis. She told him about being told she had 2 months to live. She told him about Mother Sarah and the miracle of faith. She told him about beating stage 4 cancer when the doctors said it was impossible. She told him about coming home early to find her husband and best friend in bed together. And then she told him about the plot to take over her father's company. James listened without interrupting. His expression didn't change, but his hands clenched into fists. When Diamond was finished, he picked up the phone and called someone. "I need you to contact Roosevelt Washington," he said. "Tell him that his daughter needs to see him immediately. This is a matter of urgent legal and family importance." By the time Diamond walked into her father's office at the Washington Company headquarters in downtown Houston, the sun was setting over the city skyline. Roosevelt Washington was a tall man in his late 60s, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that had built an empire from nothing. He was a man who knew how to fight, and he knew how to win. He took one look at his daughter's face and stood up from behind his desk. "Baby girl," he said, "what happened?" Diamond told him everything. She told him about Terrence and Victoria. She told him about the plot to wait for her to die and then steal the company. She told him about the conversation in the study. She told him about the words they had spoken. She told him about the betrayal that went deeper than just infidelity. This was a plot to take advantage of his daughter's death to steal his life's work. Roosevelt listened without saying a word, and when Diamond was finished, he did something that surprised her. He started making phone calls. He called his security team. He called his lawyers. He called the FBI, and he told them that he had evidence of a corporate conspiracy that needed to be investigated immediately. "Your husband," Roosevelt said to Diamond, taking her hand across his desk, "just committed a federal crime, corporate espionage, conspiracy, attempted fraud. He's going to prison, baby girl, and when he gets out, he's going to be broke." "How can you be sure?" Diamond asked. "Because I'm Roosevelt Washington," her father said, "and nobody steals from me or my family and gets away with it." Diamond sat in the offices of the Federal Bureau of Investigation with a folder of documents in front of her. The folder contained everything: emails between Terrence and Victoria, text messages discussing the company takeover, financial records showing how they had been planning to drain her father's assets and position themselves to take over the company. But there was something else, something that made Diamond's hands shake as she looked at it. A recorded phone conversation between Terrence and Victoria from 6 months ago, when Diamond was at her sickest. Miss Lorraine had thought to record it. She had gone back to the study one day and set her phone in a place where it would capture their words. She had done it without telling anyone. She had done it to protect Miss Diamond, in case one day she needed proof. The FBI agent pressed play. "She's not going to make it," Terrence's voice came through the speaker. "The doctor said maybe 2 months, and when she's gone, everything changes." "How long do you think?" Victoria asked. "The doctor gave her 2 months," Terrence said. "Maybe 3 if she's lucky. I've already talked to Roosevelt about what happens to the company after she dies." "And what did he say?" Victoria asked. "He said that he was thinking about retiring," Terrence said, "and he wanted to talk to me about taking over the company. He thinks I'm the one who understands the business well enough to handle it." Victoria laughed, a laugh filled with greed and malice. "So we just have to wait," she said. "Exactly," Terrence replied. "We wait for Diamond to die, and then we're rich." The FBI agent turned off the recording. His name was Agent David Chen, and he had been investigating corporate crimes for 20 years. He looked at Diamond with sympathy in his eyes. "We have enough to press charges," he said. "Multiple charges. This is more serious than we initially thought. This goes beyond corporate conspiracy. This is conspiracy to benefit from someone's death. This is conspiracy to commit fraud on a massive scale." Diamond nodded. She felt numb. She felt like she was watching this all happen to someone else. What neither Terrence nor Victoria knew was that Miss Lorraine had done something incredibly brave 3 days after the confrontation in the bedroom. She had gone to the police. She had told them everything she had overheard. She had provided them with the recording she had made, and she had offered to testify. When Terrence's lawyers found out about Miss Lorraine's statement, when they heard the recording, they knew the case was over. They knew that their client was finished. Terrence met with Diamond's attorney, James Patterson, and offered a settlement. He would give Diamond everything: the house, the cars, the savings, half his retirement, and in exchange he wanted to avoid trial. Diamond refused. "I want him in prison," she told James. "I want him to face justice. I want the world to know what he did." But then something happened that changed Diamond's mind about Victoria, though not about Terrence. Victoria called her. "I need to see you," Victoria said over the phone. Her voice was broken, shattered, destroyed. "Please, I need to explain. I need to tell you why I did this." They met at a coffee shop in Texas City. Victoria looked like a ghost. She had lost weight. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked like someone who had realized too late what she had done. She looked like someone who was dying from the inside out. "I was invisible," Victoria said without preamble. "My marriage was invisible. I was invisible in my own life. My husband had told me he didn't love me anymore. He was having an affair with his secretary. He treated me like I didn't matter, like I was just an accessory in his life, and I felt myself disappearing." Diamond listened without saying anything. "And then Terrence started paying attention to me," Victoria continued. "He told me I was beautiful. He told me I was intelligent. He told me I was worth something. And I was so desperate to feel loved, so desperate to feel seen, that I let myself believe him. I let myself do something that I knew was wrong. I betrayed the one person who had always been there for me. I betrayed you." Victoria started to cry. "When I heard that you had beaten the cancer," she said, "when I realized that you were going to live, I felt like God was punishing me. I felt like the universe was telling me that what I did was evil because you had survived. You had beaten death, and I had tried to take advantage of your illness to get ahead. I'm a monster, Diamond. I'm a monster and I deserve to go to prison." "Why should I believe you?" Diamond asked. "Because I'm going to prove it," Victoria said. "I'm going to give the FBI everything. I'm going to make sure that Terrence goes to prison. I'm going to plead guilty to my part in this. And then I'm going to disappear. I'm going to leave Texas City. I'm never going to contact you again. But I wanted to say this one thing before I do. I'm sorry, Diamond. I'm so sorry. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I've done." Terrence Richardson was convicted on 3 counts of corporate conspiracy, 2 counts of attempted fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to benefit from the death of another. He was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Victoria Lane pleaded guilty to corporate conspiracy and agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors. In exchange for her testimony, she received a suspended sentence and 3 years of probation. She left Texas City immediately after the trial and moved to Portland, Oregon, where she started working for a nonprofit organization focused on helping women rebuild their lives after making terrible mistakes. Terrence's lawyers appealed the conviction twice. Each time, the appeals court affirmed the guilty verdict, and each time, Diamond felt the weight of the betrayal get a little bit lighter. 6 months after Terrence went to prison, Diamond received a letter in the mail. It was from Mother Sarah, the old woman who had come to pray with her in the hospital. "Dear child," the letter read, "I heard that you have been going through trials and tribulations since I last saw you. I wanted you to know that I have been praying for you every single day. God has a plan for your life, and it is a good plan. It is a plan filled with healing and redemption and love. Hold on to your faith, dear one. The same faith that healed your cancer is going to heal your broken heart. God will never leave you." Diamond cried when she read the letter, because she understood something that she hadn't understood before. The cancer had almost killed her body, but the betrayal had tested her spirit, and her spirit had survived. Her spirit had grown stronger. Her spirit had been refined in the fire and come out pure gold. She called the hospital and asked for Mother Sarah's contact information. When she finally reached the old woman, she asked if they could meet. They met at a coffee shop on a sunny afternoon. Mother Sarah was smaller than Diamond remembered, her frame bent with age, her hair completely white. But her eyes were as bright as diamonds, shining with the light of God's love. "You survived," Mother Sarah said, holding Diamond's hands in hers. "I did," Diamond agreed. "I survived stage 4 cancer. I survived betrayal. I survived losing the 2 people I loved most." "That's because you had faith," Mother Sarah said. "Not faith in your husband, not faith in your best friend, faith in God. And that faith has made you unbreakable. That faith has made you a warrior." A year after the trial, Diamond received a phone call from her father. "I'm retiring," Roosevelt said, "and I want you to take over the company." Diamond had been working in the company for the past year, learning the business, understanding the operations, building relationships with clients and partners. But she had never expected this. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Roosevelt said. "You've got the business sense. You've got the drive. You've got the integrity. And most importantly, you've got the faith that made you survive stage 4 cancer. You've got the faith that made you survive betrayal. That's what this company needs. That's what the world needs." At the age of 38, Diamond Richardson became the CEO and president of the Washington Company. She was the first woman to hold the position in the company's 40-year history, and she was determined to use the company's resources and influence to make a difference in the world. 3 months after Diamond became CEO of the Washington Company, she sat in her office on the top floor of the Houston headquarters building and looked out at the city sprawling beneath her. She thought about her journey. She thought about the stage 4 cancer that should have killed her. She thought about the betrayal that should have broken her. She thought about the miracle that had saved her life. And she realized something. Her life wasn't just saved so that she could survive. Her life was saved so that she could help others survive. Her life was saved so that she could use her pain to create purpose. Her life was saved so that she could turn her suffering into service. She called a meeting with the company's board of directors. "I want to create a new initiative," Diamond said, standing at the head of the conference table. "I want the Washington company to fund a cancer research facility in Texas City. I want us to build housing for cancer patients and their families who can't afford to travel to treatment centers. I want us to create scholarships for people who have survived cancer and want to go back to school." One of the board members, an older man named Preston Wells, leaned back in his chair. "That's a beautiful vision," he said, "but it's also going to cost millions of dollars, millions that could go to shareholder dividends and company growth." "I'm going to fund it myself," Diamond said. "The $4.7 million from my divorce settlement, every penny of it, that's going into this project." The board members looked at each other in shock. "All of it?" Preston asked. "All of it," Diamond confirmed. "Because money that came from betrayal needs to be transformed into something pure, and there's nothing more pure than giving someone a second chance at life." The Diamond Richardson Cancer Survival Center opened in Texas City 18 months later. It was a sprawling facility with 30 beds for patients who were undergoing cancer treatment and needed a place to stay. It had a chapel where people could pray. It had a community kitchen where families could cook meals together. It had a library full of books about cancer and healing and faith. It had gardens where patients could walk and find peace. And it had a special wing dedicated to Mother Sarah, the old woman who had come to pray with strangers for 30 years. When Mother Sarah walked through the doors of the center for the first time, she wept. She wept because she saw what her faithfulness had created. She wept because she understood that Diamond's miracle was now becoming a miracle for thousands of other people. "This is what God does," Mother Sarah said, holding Diamond's hand. "He takes our pain and transforms it into purpose. He takes our betrayal and transforms it into beauty. He takes our suffering and transforms it into service." The center treated its first patient the month after it opened. Her name was Sarah, and she was a 31-year-old woman with stage 3 breast cancer. She came to the center terrified, broken, alone, and she left 3 months later in full remission, with her faith restored, with her hope renewed, with her life transformed. By the end of the first year, the center had treated over 200 patients. By the end of the second year, it had treated over 500, and the center became known throughout Texas as a place where miracles happened. It became known as a place where faith could heal what medicine alone could not. 2 years after the center opened, Diamond received a visitor. Terrence Richardson had been released from federal prison after serving 4 years of his 6-year sentence. He had been released early for exemplary behavior. He was gaunt, his hair turned gray, his spirit broken. He looked like a man who had paid a terrible price for his sins. He asked to see Diamond. Diamond almost turned him away, but something inside her, something that came from the faith that had saved her life, made her agree to the meeting. "I don't know what I thought I would say," Terrence said, sitting across from her in her office, his hands trembling. "I don't know what I thought I could do to make this right, but I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. I needed to tell you that I was wrong. I needed to tell you that watching you become this incredible woman, watching you take the pain that I caused you and transform it into something beautiful. It's the only thing that's given my life any meaning in prison." Diamond looked at her ex-husband and felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no lingering attachment, just compassion for a man who had destroyed his own life. "I forgive you," she said, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let it go. I deserve to be free from the bitterness and hate that your betrayal caused, and the only way I can be free is to forgive you." Terrence left her office with tears streaming down his face. 6 months later, Terrence started volunteering at the Diamond Richardson Cancer Survival Center. He worked in the kitchen, preparing healthy meals for patients. He worked in the chapel, helping people find peace. He worked in the community garden, growing vegetables and herbs for the center. He never asked for Diamond's forgiveness again. He never asked for anything. He simply worked, day after day, trying to transform his own pain into something that could help others. One day, Diamond saw him teaching a young boy how to plant tomatoes in the garden. She watched as Terrence knelt down beside the child and showed him how to dig the hole, how to place the seed, how to cover it with soil. She watched as the boy's face lit up with joy at the thought of growing something living. And she realized that redemption was possible, that people could change, that even those who had betrayed you could find their way back to humanity. It was in the cancer center that Diamond met Elijah Bennett. Elijah was a hospital administrator from Houston who had volunteered to help the center improve its medical protocols. He was a man in his early 40s with kind eyes and a gentle soul. He was a widower. His wife had died of stage 4 cancer 5 years earlier. He understood Diamond's journey because he had walked a similar path. He had lost someone to cancer. He knew the pain. He knew the grief. But he also knew that life could continue, that love could bloom even after tragedy. They didn't fall in love immediately. They became friends first. They talked about cancer. They talked about loss. They talked about faith. They talked about how suffering could either break you or make you stronger. "I think you're the strongest woman I've ever met," Elijah said to her one afternoon, as they sat in the garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I don't feel strong," Diamond replied. "I feel like I'm just trying to survive one day at a time." "That's what strength is," Elijah said. "It's not about never falling down, it's about getting back up every single time. You survived stage 4 cancer. You survived betrayal. You survived loss. You survived. That's the definition of strength." It took 3 years before Elijah asked Diamond to marry him. And when he did it in the chapel of the cancer center, surrounded by patients and staff and doctors and volunteers. He did it in front of Mother Sarah, who gave them her blessing and prayed for their union. He did it in front of Roosevelt Washington, who cried with joy that his daughter had finally found a love that was real. He did it in front of Miss Lorraine, who had protected Diamond all those years ago. "I love you," Elijah said, placing the ring on Diamond's finger. "Not because you survived cancer, not because you survived betrayal, but because you chose to transform your suffering into service, because you chose to help others when you could have given up, because you chose love over hate, because you chose faith over fear." On the day that Diamond and Elijah were married, the cancer center was treating its 1,000th patient, a young woman named Rebecca, who had been diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer and given a death sentence by her previous doctors. Rebecca came to the wedding in a wheelchair, bald from chemotherapy, weak from treatment, but she came. And when Diamond walked down the aisle in her white dress, Rebecca stood up out of her wheelchair and clapped. She clapped with tears streaming down her face. She clapped because she was alive, because she had hope, because she believed in miracles. "You did it," Rebecca said, her voice weak but determined. "You survived, you're still here." Diamond stopped and held Rebecca's hand. "We survived," she said. "You and me, we both survived, and we're going to keep surviving, we're going to keep living, we're going to keep fighting." That night at the wedding reception, Diamond stood and told her story. She told the gathered guests, more than 400 people, many of them cancer survivors, about the stage 4 cancer diagnosis, about the doctors who said she would die, about the miracle of remission, about her faith in God when science had given up on her. She told them about coming home early and finding her husband and best friend in bed together. She told them about the betrayal that followed. She told them about the plot to take over her father's company. And then she told them about the choice she made. "I could have let the cancer destroy my body," Diamond said, her voice strong and clear. "I could have let the betrayal destroy my spirit. I could have let the rage consume my soul. But I chose something different. I chose to believe in miracles. I chose to believe that God had a plan for my life. I chose to take the pain that I experienced and transform it into purpose. She looked out at the faces in the room, at the cancer survivors, at the families of patients, at the doctors and nurses and volunteers who had worked tirelessly to help people heal. And this, Diamond said, gesturing to include everyone in the room, is what that choice created. This community, this center, this family of people who understand that life is precious, that miracles are real, that faith can move mountains. 5 years after Diamond and Elijah were married, the Washington Company had grown to become one of the largest real estate development firms in the South. But more importantly, the Diamond Richardson Cancer Survival Center had become a model for cancer care centers across the country. The center had treated over 8,000 patients. It had funded cancer research that had led to 5 new treatment protocols. It had created 500 jobs in the Texas City community. It had trained over 3,000 volunteers in the art of compassionate care. And it had saved countless lives. Terrence Richardson, working as a full-time volunteer at the center, had found redemption. He had found purpose. He had found a way to transform his own suffering into service. He was never going to be the man he was before his imprisonment, but he had become a better man. A man who understood the value of a second chance. A man who worked tirelessly to help cancer patients find hope. Victoria Lane, living in Portland and running her nonprofit, had also found redemption. She had dedicated her life to helping women who had been betrayed by the men they loved. She had created a support network that helped thousands of women rebuild their lives. She had transformed her own betrayal into a mission to help others. Mother Sarah, now in her 90s, still came to the cancer center every single week to pray with patients. She had become a symbol of faith and hope for everyone who came through the doors. She had become a living reminder that God's love never fails. And Diamond Richardson stood at the center of it all, a woman who had survived stage 4 cancer when the doctors said it was impossible, a woman who had survived betrayal by the 2 people she loved most, a woman who had survived the worst that life could throw at her, a woman who had taken her pain and transformed it into a legacy of healing. Roosevelt Washington, watching his daughter from the wings, understood something that he had always known, that true strength wasn't about never falling down. True strength was about getting back up. True strength was about transforming your suffering into service. True strength was about believing in miracles even when the world told you miracles weren't possible. And his daughter was the strongest person he had ever known. If you're watching this story right now, and you're going through your own cancer battle, your own betrayal, your own impossible situation, I want you to hear this. Your pain is real, your suffering is valid, and your survival is inevitable if you choose it. Diamond Richardson didn't survive stage 4 cancer because she was special. She survived because her faith was stronger than her fear. She didn't survive betrayal because she was perfect. She survived because she chose to transform her suffering into service. And that's what God wants for all of us. Not to just survive, but to thrive. Not to just get through, but to create something beautiful from the ashes of what has been destroyed. The lesson of Diamond's story is this: faith transforms everything. It transforms a diagnosis of death into a diagnosis of hope. It transforms betrayal into redemption. It transforms suffering into service. It transforms a broken life into a beautiful legacy. If you're going through something hard right now, if you feel like the world is crushing you, if you're not sure if you can keep fighting, look at Diamond's story. Remember that she felt the same way. Remember that she had nowhere to turn except to God. And remember that God answered her prayer. God healed her cancer. God gave her a second chance. God gave her a purpose. And God can do the same for you. All you have to do is believe. All you have to do is have faith. All you have to do is trust that there is a plan for your life. A good plan. A plan filled with healing and redemption and love. Hold on, keep fighting. Believe in miracles. Because miracles are real. And you deserve one too. This story is finished, but your story is just beginning. If this video changed the way you think about faith, about survival, about redemption, I need you to share it. Share it with someone who is going through cancer. Share it with someone who has been betrayed. Share it with someone who needs to know that miracles are real. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. And most importantly, go out into the world and be a miracle for someone else. Because that's what Diamond did. That's what Mother Sarah did. And that can be what you do too. We'll see you in the next story. Thank you for watching.